November 1605, and there he is, Guy Fawkes. And you get to learn about the memes, right? The memes, you'll see the memes of 9/11, right? The elements of a myth. He's got to have spurs, he's got to have a lantern. And he's got to be going in, and they catch him because he's just about to light the powder trains to blow the whole thing up. Now, the story is, who sent him? The Pope, the Jesuits, the Spanish. And in reality, none of those. And we get to see the notion of patsies. These are the patsies of 1605. There's Guy Fawkes, Guido Fawkes, Thomas Percy, Robert Winter, and a bunch of others. Now, the majority are double agents. The majority. As a matter of fact, almost all of them. I think there's only really one of them, maybe Robert Winter, who may not be a double agent. But otherwise, they're all double agents. Something that teaches us about 9/11. Now, this is the Bush of the day. This is James I. He was, full of inertia. He didn't want war. He wanted to marry his children in a certain way. But that wasn't good enough for the faction that was actually controlling the government. In other words, a figurehead king, a figurehead president, a puppet president. So he has to be pushed into a much more aggressive posture. Next, please. And there is the head of the invisible government in those days, Lord Robert Cecil, Lord Salisbury, the founder of a political faction which exists today in London, and it's very strong. It's practically called the Conservative Party, although not only. So here's the Prime Minister of the country who organized the plot using a group of desperate double agents. I point to this because the U.S.-British financier faction that we're dealing with, in its birth pangs, had recourse to terrorism on what was, for the time, a fairly monstrous scale. And now, the death agony of the Anglo-American financier faction is marked by the same thing. And I think this is an interesting pattern. Other writers, an Italian called Sanguinetti, have also remarked on this, and I've put it in the book. Now, here in the United States, we're dealing with this secret government. When did the secret government start? Hard to say. Probably sometime after the Civil War. Probably sometime, certainly before you had the battleship Maine blown up in Havana Harbor. The most recent study by Admiral Rickover, famous admiral, found that the explosion came from inside the boat. So, an inside job. Not done by the Spanish who were controlling Havana Harbor. But here we have the Hearst Press. Okay? Here's the Maine. Here's an underwater mine. And here we have algunos bin Ladenitos. Los bin Ladenitos Españoles with their periscope, and they're about to blow it up. And it says, "This picture fixes the responsibility to the satisfaction of the American people." So take heart, right? Those fascist parrots you hear on the radio every afternoon, and O'Reilly and Hannity and all the fascist parrots, they're not new. That's just the Hearst Press on the air with their usual jingoistic yellow garbage. Next. And remember, McKinley was not interested in going to war really, but he was forced to by the furor created in the Congress. In other words, you stampede the Congress and you get what you want. So that's nothing new. There's also a tradition, it's more recent. I don't know if you noticed this, but for people my age, this should have been a kind of an earth-shaking event. In, I believe it was September of '05, the National Security Agency, in the news these days, has conceded that most of the allegations of the Gulf of Tonkin incident of August 1964 were false. But they were not ordered by Lyndon B. Johnson or Dean Rusk or McNamara, no. Those were middle-level employees covering up, CYA, and that's what it was. Now, too bad for the 60,000 people who died in that war from this side. Too bad for the 2 to 3 million on the other side. Too bad for Cambodia, destroyed and left in prey to a fascist dictatorship. It was a fake. So get used to the idea that they lie and they fake, and not only in the previous century, but also quite recently in your lifetime, enough to have impacted you, or most people here in the room. Now, let's begin to talk a little bit about the impossibilities of the official version. And I want to take this opportunity to come up with some news in terms of Abel Danger. One of the problems with this is you have these 19 people, and nobody knows where they come from. There's no proof that they had any connection to anything. Some of them are from Saudi Arabia, but some of them are not, right? Atta's from Egypt, apparently, if he exists. We're in a realm of pure myth. And there's also the tremendous problem of whether these people could ever, like Atta or Jara over here, or Hani Hanjour, probably the most inept, could they have ever piloted these planes, right? And there seems to be the answer is no. Well, the 9/11 Commission report, right, the Governor Kane and Lee Hamilton and so forth from July of '05 says, well, those are the people who did it. Now, we have to pause for a second. If you believe the official version, and I say this to everybody, if you believe the official version, what you're saying is that Bush was a liar. Most people, I think, would agree with this. Bush was a liar up until September 11th. And then, strangely, for a couple of months, he told the truth. And then he went back to being a liar again. Right? So here's the whole government, through the voice of David Kane, saying, when it comes to Iraq, we were all wrong. Well, we lied. You weren't wrong. You lied. So can you believe, can anybody believe, and this is where you got to get to the gatekeepers. If you profess the official version, you are saying, Bush lied in the campaign, everybody knows, but then after 9/11 he told the truth, and then he went back to lying. No. He lied before, during, and after. Now, my method essentially regards terrorist events as composites. They're a point of intersection of 3 or 4 different levels of reality. And the main thing you have to understand is you've got certainly the people you see, right, the ones we've just showed you, Atta and company. Those are the dupes, the useful idiots, the fanatics, but above all the double agents who run them. Those are the scapegoats who are going to take the fall. The problem you always have to apply is, does the patsy have the physical technical ability to create the effects observed? Can Lee Harvey Oswald, using the Mannlicher Carcano 1917 rifle, successfully fire the requisite number of shots with bolt action in the time that he has? No. And it doesn't depend on his criminal intent. He can have all the criminal intent in the world. It won't let him do it. And these guys, you can say, oh, they hate us. Oh, they hate us. Doesn't matter how much they hate you. They can't do it. Okay, so this is a whole world of provocateurs, double agents. This is sort of the wormy underside of FBI, CIA, NSA, the rest of them. You've also got to look for moles, government officials loyal to a private network. This is important. They don't follow the chain of command, even. They're certainly not loyal to a constitution, but they're rather loyal to a clique. It's ultimately in Wall Street, but it's also senior government officials, generals, and people like this. Those are the moles. They also have to organize the cover-up. The moles have to make sure that nobody interferes with the patsies before the fact. Not because the patsies are going to carry out the attack, but because if the patsies are already in jail, you can't blame the crime on the patsies. So they've got to stay free, and then they've got to be arrested immediately, and you've then got to have a cover-up. And then you have professional killers. There's got to be a role in this for, I believe, a privatized command center. There's got to be a role for assassins. In other words, people like the people who really killed Kennedy coming into town, getting out of town. Patsies love attention. They love to get on TV. Again, Oswald gets on TV, gets on the radio, gets noticed. Atta, same thing, right? Always fighting with people, abrasive. Then the professional killers who don't say anything. They come in, shoot, leave. They're not ideologues in the same sense. They're not interested in popping off in public. Before we leave, just a privatized command center. Again, outside, I believe, certainly not Dick Cheney. Can you imagine you're going to have this whole operation, you're going to make it depend on a guy who's 4 heart attacks and 3 pacemakers, sitting there with his wife who keeps turning the CNN up so you can't hear the interagency task force talking? And the whole thing doesn't work without the brainwashed world of the controlled corporate media. Okay? And that's state-sponsored false flag terrorism, because the thing says we're Al-Qaeda, and they're not Al-Qaeda. They're a branch of CIA and MI6. How are we doing? Are we stuck? Don't tell me.
Yeah, could you take a look at this? Maybe the cursor's moved or something?
Go ahead. Okay. Now, it became clear very soon after 9/11 that Atta was a double agent. You open up Newsweek magazine, it says Atta and the others lived on U.S. military bases and were trained at U.S. military bases. Well, what can it mean? Daniel Hopsicker's research, right? Those guys were double agents, Atta and company. So what you've got to imagine is you've got a number of double agents. Let's assume there were 19. We don't know. We're just guessing. Let's assume there were 19. How many were double agents? Guys who knew that they were agents. A third? A half? How many were dupes? How many were fanatics?